The biggest productivity mistake isn't laziness. It's being productive all day and still ending the week wondering why your life hasn't changed. And I learned this the hard way. There was a season I could spend at least 8 hours a day on my desk. My calendar looked full, my to-do list kept getting checked off, I answered every message, organized every folder, planned every project, and yet months later I almost had nothing meaningful to show. And that's when I realized something that completely changed the way I work. Smart people don't usually fail because they avoid work. They fail because they are addicted to the feeling of being productive. And those are two completely different things. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you the one question that exposed this trap in my own life. It took me from constantly being busy to finally making progress. But first, we need to understand why intelligent people are actually the easiest target. I want you to think about the smartest people you know. They're curious, they are capable, they're interested in things. Sounds like an advantage, but not always. I want you to imagine a software engineer who wakes up in the morning intending to build a product. Before opening his code editor, he opens one productivity video just to motivate him. But then that video recommends a note-taking app. So he spends 30 minutes comparing apps, and while comparing apps, he discovers a new AI tools, so he has to watch the reviews and download the tutorials. And after all this, he reorganizes his entire workflow. And by evening, he has a perfect system, but remember, he has not written a single line of code. But the scary part is, he genuinely feels productive. And now, that is the trap. Because your brain doesn't reward progress, it rewards activity. And activity is much easier to manufacture than progress. Now, this is what I call the attention tax. Every tiny decision, every notification, every unnecessary task silently taxes your attention until there is nothing left for meaningful work. You're actually paying with your focus without even realizing it. Now, I want you to remember this. The world doesn't reward the busiest person. It rewards the person who finishes valuable work. And those are not the same thing. Being busy creates motion, deep work creates momentum, and momentum changes your life. So, tomorrow morning, before opening your phone, write down the one outcome that would make today successful. Not 10 tasks, but one outcome. Everything else becomes secondary, because if everything matters, then nothing matters. One day, I watched a video of a professor performing an experiment that perfectly explains this. He placed a large glass jar in front of his students, then first he filled it with large rocks. Then he asked, "Is it full?" And everyone said yes. He poured in gravel, and gravel filled the spaces between the rocks. Again he asked, "Now is it full?" The students laughed. Then came sand, then water. Finally he smiled. The point isn't that there's always room for more. The point is, if he had not put the large stone first, then they would not fit in. And that's exactly how smart people work. They start with emails, then messages, then YouTube, then planning, then organizing, then small tasks. And by the time they reach their biggest goal, they have no energy left. It's because your best thinking gets spent on your smallest problems, and that's working it backwards. I want you to learn this. Your life is shaped by what receives your first hours, not your leftover hours. Your first hours belong to your future, and the rest of the hours belong to everyone. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to protect the first 90 minutes of your day. No emails, no social media, no news, no unnecessary conversations, only your biggest rock. I want you to guard those 90 minutes like your future depends on them, because actually it does. Earlier, I told you there's one question that completely exposed my productivity trap. We'll get there, but before, there's another mistake that is even more dangerous, because this one disguises itself as self-improvement. A few years ago, I could not stop consuming content. Books, podcasts, YouTube, courses. Like every single day I would learn something new, or at least I thought I did. Then one afternoon, I looked at the books on my bookshelf. I had read a couple of books, highlighted hundreds of pages, filled notepads with ideas, yet my life had not changed nearly as much as my knowledge had. And that's when I realized I was not learning, I was collecting information. See, knowledge had become entertainment, learning had become procrastination. I wasn't avoiding work, I was replacing work with preparation. This became one of the biggest ideas I have ever learned, and I call it the replacement principle. Your brain will always try to replace difficult progress with easy substitute that equally feel productive. Reading instead of writing, planning instead of launching, researching instead of creating, optimizing instead of finishing. The substitute feels productive because it sits close to the real work, but close enough never gets the results. Now, you don't become successful by preparing forever. You become successful by surviving imperfect action, because progress beats preparation every single day. Now, I want you to use the 70% rule. The moment you feel about 70% ready, I want you to start. Publish, launch, record, build. Because the final 30% isn't preparation, it's fear wearing productivity as a disguise. Okay, now let's talk about dopamine, because this is where everything connects. See, your brain loves frequent rewards. Checking notifications, crossing tiny tasks off your list, refreshing analytics, replying to messages. Every small completion gives you a tiny dopamine hit. And that's a problem, because your most meaningful goals don't work like that. Writing a book doesn't reward you every 5 minutes. Building a business doesn't. Learning a skill doesn't. Becoming disciplined definitely doesn't. The rewards are delayed, and that's why shallow work feels addictive. And I call this the dopamine gap. It's the gap between immediate reward and meaningful reward. And most people fail inside this gap. Not because they're incapable, but because they're uncomfortable. And the people who eventually succeed simply become comfortable in this gap longer than everyone else. And I want you to know that the future belongs to the person who can delay satisfaction longest. Not forever, just longer than the average. So every day, deliberately do one task with zero immediate reward. Study, write, code, practice, read difficult material, sit with the discomfort. By doing this, you're training your brain to stop demanding instant gratification. And that's a competitive advantage most people never develop. Okay, now let's come back to the question I promised. The question that completely exposed my productivity trap. Every evening, I ask myself one question. What did I finish today that still matters next month? And that's it. Not how many hours I worked, not how many tasks I completed, not how busy I felt, only what still matters 30 days from now. The first time I asked myself that question, the answer was almost nothing. I had been winning each day while losing the year. That realization hurt, but it also changed everything for me. So now, before I start any task, I first ask myself a question. Will this matter next month? And if the answer is no, I either eliminate it, automate it, postpone it, as simple as that. Because attention is finite. Every meaningless work steals attention from meaningful work. Every distraction charges another attention tax. Every shortcut widens the dopamine gap. Every substitute violates the replacement principle, and little by little, your potential disappears beneath a mountain of productivity-looking nonsense. Now here's what I want you to do after this video. Take out a piece of paper, write down the 3 things you spend most time doing this week. Then ask yourself one brutal question. If I repeated this exact week 50 times, would I become the person I want to be? Don't answer quickly. I want you to really think about it. Because your future isn't created by your biggest ambitions. It's created by the ordinary week you keep repeating. The productivity trap isn't about doing too little. It's about doing so much that the only thing left undone are the ones that could change your life. The people who build their lives aren't the ones who master every productivity hack. They're the ones who learn to protect their attention, embrace the dopamine gap, and refuse to replace meaningful work with comfortable substitutes. So if that's the kind of person you're becoming, then don't let this video become another piece of content you consume and forget. Close YouTube, pick one meaningful work and finish it. Because disciplined people aren't defined by what they know, they are defined by what they complete.